And who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. The breaking news as we speak just in the last minutes. It appears Roe is dead. It appears that the conservative Supreme Court is going to shoot down, and I don't know how far this is going to go. Is it a complete, total repudiation of Roe? Will this now revert back to the states where now crazy states get to do anything they want to women and their reproductive rights? And will this wake up young women now to go, hey, this voting thing kind of matters? Will be interesting to see what the decision is. Right now, a draft, as I understand, is being circulated. The initial response that I have seen, just minutes ago, it has popped out. It is being overturned. So this means, depending on what state you live in, hello, women, your reproductive rights are now up to some man in a legislature somewhere. That should scare you. That simple. Now, the reality, this is one of those moments. One of those moments where voter power, where the polls show overwhelmingly the American people are supportive of safe, rare, and legal. The legal part being important. Nobody wants to go back to the days of my parents' generation and prior, where people were dying in back alleys and all of that. But look, you have the moneyed interests and the zealot class who have done nothing to prevent the situation. They've done nothing to make it better. They've done nothing to educate. They've done nothing to prevent. They've done nothing to encourage people to bring children into this world through policy, through better educational opportunities, healthcare, all kinds of stuff. They've done none of that. And yet here we are in this moment. So I'm sure this is something we will be talking about as more details. But I wanted to throw this out. Now, my original open going to fall way short of all of that, because over the weekend, this was one of those, I was going to start, and this is where I'm going to go, but I was going to start with, I'm on the way of checking something off of my honey-do list. My wife and I have been married over 20 years, and one of the things that she has asked for years is a simple clothesline. Simple clothesline. And I have finally purchased the material to do it, and it got me thinking of something over the weekend. And I go, this is a weird transition now, but when I went to go buy the poles to make said clothesline, they doubled in price. And they're outrageously expensive. I mean, just mind-blowingly expensive. I'm going, really? And then look, the woman behind the counter is like, oh, I hope you're prepared for the price, and then she gave me this kind of, it's because of inflation, it's because of the cost of metal has gone, and look, I've been doing this long enough to know when I'm being gouged, and understand, it's been 17 years that my wife has wanted this done. So being gouged is going to happen regardless. I got to get it done. There's no going back from it. I'm going to get gouged. It's going to happen. I accept that. But please don't tell me I'm stupid on top of it. No, it's the cost of metal. I see the poles. They're rusting. They've been laying around a while. A couple years probably. You made a bunch of them a couple years back. that metal didn't appreciate. There wasn't a line behind me of people paying a ridiculous price for these clothesline poles. There wasn't there. It wasn't there. The supply and demand thing that they tell us. If there's a huge rush and everybody wants them, yeah, I get it. But they had plenty of them. Supply was there. And, she gave me it's the cost of metal. I just wanted you to be prepared for that. And, in my mind, I'm going, well, at least she didn't do me and my coworkers are greedy and we asked for pennies for a raise and, they gave it to us and now we're going to pass it on to you because I'd have bought that. I'm okay, yeah, at least it's going to somebody who needs it. You got it. What this is pure opportunism. And I didn't argue with her. Look, I know when I'm being gouged. It's the free market. I could have walked out the door. But it got me thinking. It got me thinking in this moment that, the lack of power for working people has created this environment for businesses all up and down the scale, from the big monopolistic ones to the local ones that, like this mom and pop, who saw an opportunity to cash in a little bit more that, hey, one or two people in the area are probably going to want this stuff. Here's an opportunity to put a couple of bucks more in our pocket. And I don't begrudge somebody of making a profit, but there's the, don't lie to me and tell me that, the cost of metal is going up. Not that much. But what it tells me is, you look at this inflation and what it is, it's an indictment of our lack of working class power. It's the lack of power as consumers, as citizens. And the reality is corporate America has us right where they want us. Because still, I had someone in that line. It's Joe Biden's fault. Now, he wasn't there to buy polls. He was there for another reason. I actually don't know why he was there. But Joe Biden's fault. How? How did the price of some rusty poles that I bought, they're steel. They're going to last for a very long time. I'll paint them and they'll be fine. But how did Joe Biden do that? Explain that. Now, obviously, I wasn't going to be confrontational there. I just wanted to get what I needed and leave. But this is one of those moments where you go, who truly is responsible for this? I believe it comes back to us on a bunch of levels. Because we bought it, man. I go back, 20, 30 years. We bought all of the BS hook, line, and sinker. And we're buying it now. Everyone who idiotically says, hey, Joe Biden's fault. No. It's the system that's been created. Was Biden part of a system that allowed this to happen? Okay, I'll go there with you. But to say that's all now his fault is ludicrous. Inflation is happening for a bunch of reasons. Our supply chains are screwed up. But like I said, this local metal shop, they purchased that metal probably a few years ago. Sorry, it didn't sit around appreciating. That metal was paid for back then. It is what it is. I don't see a line. I don't see the shortage. Don't see it. But you look at all of the other things, the bad policy, what corporate America has done for us, the globalization, the letting the smart people decide, how things are going to be run. And on a side, it's no wonder that the poorly educated don't trust the quote unquote smart people anymore, because all the things that they've sold us over the years, all the nonsense that they've sold us has benefited them. Now, look, I've said for years, and longtime listeners will know that I've been consistent on this. The system is working exactly as it's supposed to. Our trade policies work exactly as they were designed. Our tax policies are working exactly as they are designed. All of the systems, all of things are working exactly as corporate America wants them to, exactly as the wealthy want them to work. This is how it's going. And it's our fault for buying into this. It's the bad policy that we've allowed to spring up around us. It's the globalization that we bought into, the free trade nonsense. Hey, we're going to be able to buy cheap goods and do all this stuff. It's all of that. It's the trickle-down nonsense that they sold us. Think about it. We're going to give tax cuts to the rich and the corporations, and it's going to make us all better. Going to make us all better. Because we're all going to be able to share. We're going to be able to all share, and it's going to be wonderful. And look, anyone who ever spent any time in a sandbox as a kid knows that the kid who controls the candy bowl never shares. And if he does, he's going to share with his friends. And if you're not one of the friends, you don't get it. We learned this in the sandbox. So are we surprised when the wealthy and the well-connected share with their friends and each other and stuff their pockets to where nothing ever falls out? Are we shocked by this? No, the answer is no. Of course we're not. This is what corporate America has sold us, though. That no, what you learned in the sandbox isn't true. No, we're better. We'll learn. The whole deregulation nonsense. This is one of my favorites. One of my favorites. No, don't you don't need to regulate us. We'll regulate ourselves. Trust us. Trust us, because we'll act in our best interests. Yeah, that's why I want to regulate you, because you're going to act in your best interest, not ours. Not in societies, which is why you see Superfund sites still, which is why you see all these external costs that you and I end up picking up and they walk away from. Exactly the reason. And again, sandbox, when nobody's looking, who's throwing the sand? Or when you get older, you get your driver's license. If there's not a cop on a road, how many people are doing under 100 miles an hour? I mean, think about it. You go down this list, all of the things that they sold us, all of the, no, we know better. The mass consolidation, the privatization schemes, all of the things that enrich them, but continue to, leave us shortchanged. And also picking up the bill. It's even in their jargon. Just-in-time inventory, on-demand service, synergy, eliminate redundancy. All things to do what? Get rid of you and me. Get rid of workers. Cut their costs down to nothing. So what they can do what? More profit for them. And we're told that, no, that's business friendly. It's going to help business succeed. And then again, it'll trickle down. It's going to trickle down to us and, rivers of gold and honey, right? Isn't that what we were sold back in the 80s? It's going to be rivers of gold and honey. And who doesn't love rivers of gold and honey? Except that golden honey is yellow and it's salty. Not quite honey, though. And you think about policy after policy after policy. When the last time we raised the minimum wage, we had to give a pound of flesh to business interests. Every time we do a step forward for working people, there's 3 steps back in appeasing corporate interests. This is that moment where working class folks had better wake up. Because everything that we do that makes business happy has created an environment where they now control everything that we do. They control our political system. They control our economy. I saw over the weekend, there are 2 companies that control the mass. 2 companies that control the mass of the diaper industry. You go, what's the big deal about the diaper industry? Well, virtually every person in this country who has kids, they're buying diapers. And my wife says, no, they should use cloth diapers. And you go, yeah, if you can stay home and you can do that, that's a great alternative. But most families are 2 income, working 2 jobs. The convenience of the diapers, what choice do you have at this point? They got you, man. They got you right where they want you, and they know it. If there are 20 companies making diapers and competing, as we're told the capitalist free market system will bring us, we wouldn't have this situation. We'd have people competing for market share. We'd have people competing for quality. We'd have people competing for price. And what we're seeing with all this inflation, we know what this is. This is gouging. It's back to the polls. It's gouging. The only honest thing that I go back to something Trump said during the campaign in 2016, that he bought every one of those political people on the stage. That's what corporate America has done. And they've done it cheaply. So for me, ultimately, we're the ones responsible. We are the ones responsible for allowing the policy that's been shoveled by both parties, to be honest. And this is why I understand working class anger at Dems. But we can change this. We can demand better. Just my thoughts. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. Back with your thoughts after this. Stick around. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I look at this, and again, I come back to, we can change this. And the same thing with Roe going away. We can, in a big way, come out in the next election and start throwing bums out. It's that simple. At least that's my thought. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Julie in Minnesota listening on KTNF in Minneapolis, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Julie, how are we doing tonight?
Hi, Rick. Say, I didn't realize you've got your wife answering and screening calls. Is that right?
Yep, that is my blushing bride of more than 20 years. That I am a very fortunate man.
I am a very fortunate man. Yeah, I'm sure you are. She sounds like a very charming person. You know, I just wanted to say one of the ways to fight back against the corporation, refuse to buy something, improvise. For instance, I bet you didn't know this, but you probably could have gotten away with buying just one pole. Now, why do I say that? Well, for instance, like what my mother did for a while. I mean, we had a nice house in a nice neighborhood, so it didn't, you know, but, you know, she had a little hook on the porch in the backyard, a little metal hook. It wasn't that, you know, observable. And then there was another hook on a tree. She didn't have to buy any pole.
Yeah.
And that was our little clothesline. But, you know, that was back in the day before pollution, or much pollution in Minneapolis. And as I look out and I see once in a while, I see a clothesline, not real often, but once in a while. And I think, gee, would I want to put my sheets out there with the pollution we have nowadays? I don't know for sure if I would want to. But like I would say, if you can improvise and say, I'm not going to pay that. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to make something myself. But you know, I know what you mean. I know what you mean by the gouging.
Yeah, no. See, I've been looking for these for a while. They're solid steel. They're exactly what I wanted. It is. They're going to be there in 100
forever,
years.
Right?
No one's ever gonna. They're never going to come out of the ground. Because when I do something, I overdo it. That's always. I am the typical alpha male mindset. When it's done, it will be done. And this plays into that.
Know, I'm trying to. You know, I lived outside of Pittsburgh for many years. Back in the day, you know, 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. Oh, my gosh. That was an insane fun city in the late 70s and early 80s. But, like, is your area, is your air pretty clean? What's the air like around where you live?
We're not horrible here in the central part of the state. I mean, you know, we're a trucking hub,
okay,
so
yeah, it's probably better.
So you've got some problems, but not like, you know, the 70s. I grew up in Cleveland in the 70s, where we had the steel mills as well, and you had those problems. But,
yeah.
You know, this is my wife's thing. She wants this. She shall have this. And as any married man will tell you, if mama's happy, everybody's
Oh my
happy.
gosh.
So
Yeah. Well, nice talking to you.
You too.
I'm
Thanks,
glad
Julie.
the pollution isn't too bad where you live, Rick.
nah, good stuff. Thanks, Julie. I appreciate it. No, this is again one of these things where it's not a life necessity, but it is something that I have promised. This is one of those things. But the reason I brought it up is simple. Fact of the matter is the opportunism, the greed, the gouging. And I fully admit I could have walked away and almost did, to be honest, which would have made, another 17 years before I did it again. And, but this is that kind of thing, which leads me to this story, this study that I came across. And I love these studies that come out. And as you know, if anyone who listens to this show long enough will know that I look at these studies done by really smart people, the UCLA psychologists and the Rand economists who have married up for this collaboration. I look at most of these studies and go, duh, you could have asked me and I'd have told you. But they have done the first ever examination of what a minimum wage increase means on local marriage and divorce rates. And their basic idea is, gee, who could have known that some level of financial stability would lower stress on a relationship? Who would have known? Who would have known that financial stability and marital bliss could go together? Who would have known that not fighting over money would, keep you married longer? And then the answer to that is, well, anyone who's ever been married and anyone who's ever been behind on the rent. And we live in a moment where, the mass of the people living in this country are a paycheck away from being behind on the rent. Financial stress is one of the main causes of divorce. So, yeah, this is a great study. And it hopefully someone will read it. And hopefully the message will get to our lawmakers. But for me, the increase in the minimum wage, we shouldn't be increasing just a minimum. We should be making this a living wage. And I'm coming around more and more to the idea of a territorial prevailing wage as opposed to a minimum wage. Where, depending on where you are, we should be pushing for higher wages. Dean Baker over at the Center for Economic Policy and Research, he's saying, look, had minimum wage kept up with productivity, it'd be like $27 an hour. In other countries, the minimum wage is considerably higher because you have to live on it. We don't think that way because, again, I go back to my premise in the last segment. We do all of this stuff to make corporate America happy. We get cheap labor. We give them lax environmental regulations because, job-killing regulations. And then we give them, if they don't get enough here, we give them an out to where they can go to other countries and exploit their workers in their environment. So we here are pitted against desperation all around the globe. And corporate CEOs love that. It's like heroin to them. Cheap labor, lax environmental regulations, oh my goodness, it is like their heroin. Because what that means to them is profit. More profit for them, less opportunity for us. And this is why we as a working class, we have issues that we need addressed. Sadly, our government ain't doing it. And that's why we've got to vote. And all the distracting stuff, all the divisive stuff, we got to put that stuff away and fight on the stuff that matters. But you got to fight. You got to show up. You got to speak out. And that's why we're here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Also, if you're just now joining us, make sure you never miss a moment of the program. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. From iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. We will be found there just for you. Make sure you subscribe, share, and comment. We're going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1968. That was the day 4,000 auto workers at Chrysler's Dodge main plant in Hamtramck, Michigan, walked out in a wildcat strike. They protested assembly line speed up, but also racist foremen and the firings of 7 co-workers. The strike was significant for many reasons. It injected black power politics within the union movement. The CIO had made unprecedented gains in the 30s and 40s through interracial organizing and combating Jim Crow on the job. However, racial discrimination persisted in industries across America. The Wildcat shocked the UAW leadership, having prided itself in its early and central involvement in the civil rights movement. By 1968, many African Americans grew frustrated with the slow pace of reform and found the militancy of the Black Power movement attractive. According to historian Robert Weir, black auto worker activists considered many UAW officials paternalistic, condescending, and out of touch with the changing urban realities. Many of their white co-workers joined them on the picket lines. Black activists at Dodge, Maine condemned the UAW for failing to address the disproportionate racial discrimination they faced on the job. They demanded a separate contract that spoke to the needs of black workers and the right to bargain directly with the company. The Wildcat immediately grew into the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement and inspired similar groupings at other area auto plants. Those white workers who were initially sympathetic worried that Drum's demands would serve to weaken and ultimately split the union movement along racial lines. Drum would continue to demand for safer working conditions, shorter hours, and higher wages, an end to the Vietnam War, and more black union officials and supervisors. The movement was short-lived, however, but continues to be revered among Detroit activists today. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Today, CEOs of big corporations are playing the tricky inflation blame game. Publicly, they moan that the pandemic is slamming their poor corporations with factory shutdowns, supply chain delays, wage hikes, and other increased costs. But wait, inside their boardrooms, executives are high-fiving each other and pocketing bonuses. What's going on? The trick is that these giants are in non-competitive markets operating as monopolies, so they can set prices, mug you and me, and scamper away with record profits. In 2019, for example, before the pandemic, corporate behemoths hauled in roughly $1 trillion in profit. In 2021, during the pandemic, they grabbed more than $1.7 trillion. This huge profit jump accounts for 60% of the inflation now slapping U.S. families. Take supermarket Goliath Kroger. Its CEO gloated last summer that, quote, a little bit of inflation is always good in our business, adding that, quote, we've been very comfortable with our ability to pass on price increases to consumers. Comfortable indeed. Last year, Kroger used its monopoly pricing power to reap record profits. Then it spent $1.5 billion of those gains not to benefit consumers or workers, but to buy back its own stock. A scam that siphons profits to top executives and big shareholders. Or take fast food purveyor McDonald's. It bragged to its shareholders that despite the supply disruptions of the pandemic and higher costs for meat and labor, its top executives had used the chain's monopoly power in 2021 to up prices, thus increasing corporate profits by a stunning 59% over the previous year. And the game goes on. We're going to have the best growth we've ever had this year, said a Wall Street banking titan. This is Jim Hightower saying, hocus pocus, this is how the rich get richer.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, if I still lived in Ohio, I think I'd be writing in J.D. Mandel tomorrow as the Ohio primaries happen, because I gotta know if all of the Trumpkins go to the polls and they write in J.D. Mandel, because his name not going to be on the ballot because it doesn't exist. If Trump had that kind of power, who would be the Senate candidate? I love this. I mean, how do you get a guy who's going to endorse somebody you didn't even know who it is? That is the Trumpkins. That's just brilliant. But here we are in this weird world of Ohio, which is my former state, which has turned into really kind of a bizarre place, because their redistricting commission, they're going to have their big meeting the day after the primaries. And what makes more perfect sense than that? And here to share some thoughts on just how much nonsense that does make, I've asked Josh Raltenberg to come talk with us. Josh is a State House reporter with Spectrum One News, Ohio. Josh, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's right the whole J.D. Mandel thing. I mean, obviously a slip of the tongue, maybe. Thoughts?
That's very interesting. First he called him JP, and then he said JD Mandel. So slip of the tongue, maybe. It seems like he just forgot the name of who he was endorsing, which I guess begs the question of if he actually was a part of this process, if this was just some sort of influence from his son, Donald Trump Jr., or Peter Thiel, or if it was just a simple gaffe. But yeah, that was wild a couple days before the primary.
Yeah, I mean, and then again, because Ohio's been kind of all up in arms because the base, the Trumpkin base, they don't want JD, they want, I guess, Mandel, right?
Yeah, Mandel, Mike Gibbons have been the two names that I've been hearing from really conservative Republicans. Look, there were a lot of people that were very surprised and turned off by the former president endorsing Vance because of the things that he has said in the past about the former president. If you remember, he said he might have to hold his nose and vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. There was also that text message exchange with his former roommate where he said, is Trump, quote unquote, America's Hitler? And then Donald Trump said, I forgive him, and he's the guy who aligns with my views. And there's a lot of conservative Republicans that had a serious problem with that. It'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow's the big day. Obviously, there are a lot of questions to be answered. Obviously, the Senate race. You've got a governor's race coming up. Even some interesting congressional races. I do find it interesting that Ohio now, thanks to your redistricting commission, is going to have to do this whole primary thing again because of the failures of the Republicans to come up with a map. And I do find it interesting that they're going to wait till the day after the primary to have another meeting. I guess I just find that comical on a certain level.
Well, look, they've had a couple of weeks to get together ever since the Ohio Supreme Court struck down the fourth set of maps, and there's been on the Ohio Redistricting Commission to even acknowledge the Democrats to get a meeting going. As you said, the day after the primary will be when they meet for the first time. The maps are due Friday morning to the Ohio Supreme Court. There's a lot of people that are skeptical as to what this process will look like over Wednesday and Thursday before the maps are supposed to get to the court by Friday because of what the federal court has said, basically saying if the state doesn't get it together, then they will just implement a pair of maps that the Ohio Supreme Court already ruled unconstitutional because they unfairly favored the Republican Party. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens on Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, as someone who covers Ohio like you do, what should we be looking out for? Look, I mean, you've got the Senate race. There's 7 people running in this, 7 rich people who are spending just gobs. I think I saw a number, $65 million spent on TV and radio. And I'm going, who won this race? It was Comcast and all of the big media companies who are cashing in on this. And the poor people who have to watch these ads, they're obviously the losers. But what are you watching tomorrow? What's the thing that Josh is focusing on?
Well, tomorrow I'm actually going to be attending Governor Mike DeWine's watch party. That's what I'll be focused on. The governor, it looks like the odds-on favorite to run away with his primary. Although, in the latest poll that was released today, it said that the governor has 47% of the Republican electorate, but his other 3 opponents combined have 48%, which just begs the question, if it was only a one-on-one race, would the governor be in some serious trouble of winning his own primary? But like you said, the GOP Senate primary is what everybody's going to be focused on tomorrow. Look, JD Vance got a 10+ percentage point bump from Donald Trump's endorsement, but he's not running away with this thing right now. In fact, Josh Mandel is still right up there. And we have Matt Dolan, a state senator who is completely rebuking Donald Trump, didn't want his endorsement, who Trump has attacked twice, who's also in the mix here, which is very startling to some people. And if he was to somehow upset tomorrow, it could throw the whole thing out of whack. So tomorrow is going to be a day that will certainly not be boring.
Yeah, in Ohio, obviously the Senate race is the big thing. And look, nobody's even, and this is the sad thing, no one's talking about the Democratic side at all. And this is the
Right.
one thing that Trump has been masterful at. When he enters something, he sucks all the oxygen out of the room, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And you don't hear about the Senate campaign going on with with the Democrats over there. There are three candidates running. I personally like Tim Ryan. Or the governor races, either the potential of having the first female candidate in Ohio. That's possibly news, not being seen.
Well, look, in fairness, on the Democratic side, Tim Ryan has completely outraised his primary opponent, Morgan Harper, and the polls just haven't been close for a very long time. I think that's why you're not hearing as much about it. But Tim Ryan also has outraised every Republican in the Republican Senate primary, which will be very interesting should Tim win tomorrow, what that looks like in a one-on-one matchup going into November. Obviously, with the House and the Senate and the fate of who controls those coming up in November. And like you said, on the gubernatorial race right now, John Cranley and Nan Whaley, the former mayors of Cincinnati and Dayton, they're really good friends. They started to attack each other a little bit here, but nothing like the Senate primary race. It's really a toss-up because there hasn't been a lot of polling done in that particular race. We have to go back like 6 or 8 weeks just to see, and even at that point, we had no idea.
In the Ohio governor race, any chance the Democrat beats DeWine? I mean, DeWine's going to take a beating in the primary because he actually did some of the right things in the pandemic. Actually, did push for vaccines and all of that. So I know the Trump base will attack him for that. But any chance of there being a Democrat in the governor's mansion next year?
Well, you have to take into account that Ohio was a bellwether state up until 2016 and 2020. Donald Trump won Ohio by 8 points. I mean, that's not within the margin of error anymore. A lot of people are declaring Ohio to be a red state, and there's really only been one Democrat that's been able to win here in Ohio consistently, and that's Senator Sherrod Brown. Now, Sherrod Brown has endorsed Nan Whaley. We'll see what that does for her tomorrow, let alone should she advance into November. But I think this would be DeWine's race to lose. While there are so many conservative voters that are against him, I think that they will unify and coalesce around him after the May primary because they don't want to see a Democrat go into the governor's residence. So with that said, unless DeWine gets caught up in this House Bill 6 investigation, which is the largest bribery scheme here in state history, according to federal prosecutors, or something else happens, I just don't see it. I think DeWine retains his seat.
Yeah, you look at Ohio and look at Pennsylvania as well. When with the kind of corruption that you've seen, it's the reason that a lot of people are turned off by government. And I love the people who tell me they don't believe in government and government can't do anything right, and then they set out to show me that they're correct. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Josh Rottenberg. He is a State House reporter with Spectrum News 1 Ohio. Josh, I got to talk about the big news today.
Sure.
You've done a couple of stories on Mean Jean Schmidt and some of her legislation here recently, but it's been leaked that the Supreme Court is going to totally repudiate Roe. It's going to be overturned, which means it's going to revert back to the states, and Ohio and Jean and the rest of them are moving to move it, not just make it illegal, but illegal for rape and incest and felonies and really draconian kind of stuff. This now front and center, major issue, I think.
Well, look, it's amazing that a U.S. Supreme Court draft opinion got leaked at all, let alone this one. And, this is obviously the most polarizing thing to come before this court, which is ultra conservative, thanks to Donald Trump appointing 3 justices on its own. We'll wait to see what the final numbers look like, but this is a landmark decision from 1973. To be clear, this does not completely ban abortion in the United States. It just would give the states the rights to determine whether or not it would be legal or illegal in a given state. Bringing up Ohio, for instance, Governor Mike DeWine a couple years back signed a bill called the Heartbeat Bill, which would ban abortion when a fetal heartbeat is detected, basically 6 weeks. Now, there are other bills making their way through the State House right now. You brought up Representative Jean Schmidt. She introduced a bill that's been known as a trigger ban, basically saying the minute that the United States Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, if Governor DeWine were to sign that into law, it would ban abortion immediately in Ohio. There are two different versions of that going through the Ohio House and the Ohio Senate. It'll be interesting to see how those move now that this has been leaked. But yeah, I mean, women have enjoyed the federal right for, decades to have an abortion, and now it's seriously in question.
Oh, no, we're not. It's not just that. It's to control their own destiny. I mean, it's much more than just the simple act of healthcare. It's to control whether they're going to have control of their own lives. This
Right.
is, and the thing that's frustrating to me is I don't see a Representative Schmidt or any of these folks saying, "Hey, how do we make sure that we get people the ability to protect themselves? How do we provide pathways to encourage people to have kids?" It's all draconian. It's all heavy-handed. It's all the people who tell us we don't want government in your life, but in this instance, we're going to shove it down your throat. That's my problem. Personally, I'm not in favor of abortion. Personally, we've got technology that can help prevent it. We've got ways to do other things, but this ain't that.
Well, and also, look, I don't know how much people were paying attention to the first hearing with Representative Schmidt's bill last week, but she said something that has made headlines, not just here in the state, but across the country, when the thought of a 13-year-old girl being raped and what that would mean as far as abortion was concerned. And Representative Schmidt said that it would be a quote unquote opportunity for that girl to then make sure that that child has a productive life. I know that that was something that set off a lot of alarms, specifically amongst the Democratic members, obviously the abortion rights activists, and it was something that I don't know if Representative Schmidt would like to take that back. Listen, I've tried to catch up with Representative Schmidt on a number of different issues, and if you follow me on Twitter or if you see me around the State House, she's been running away from me. As I simply just try to hold her accountable.
Yeah, no, I saw that, and I was gonna bring this up next because the next piece of legislation I wanted to ask you about is you basically chasing her down. And look, she's fast. I gotta give you credit. You gotta do your workout to keep up, because she's got this bill that bans teaching about sexual orientation, gender identity, or I guess divisive concepts about race. I don't even know what the hell that means.
Yeah, it's very general.
But evidently, this is the thing she's running away from you on. Explain.
Yeah, so look, Florida passed, and Governor DeSantis signed a bill that's been known as "quote unquote" "Don't Say Gay," and it basically says that they don't want gender identity, sexual orientation ideals being taught in schools. And here in Ohio, not only was that something that was of the appetite of Representative Schmidt, but also a previous bill here in Ohio that was introduced that got nowhere was a bill to ban critical race theory in schools. And one reason that that bill failed was because there was another state representative, Representative Sarah Fowler Arthur, who tried to say that we should both sides the Holocaust and basically take into account what the quote unquote German soldiers, which are really the Nazis, which they were thinking during World War II. Now, once she said that out loud, that bill basically died. But what spawned as a result was Representative Schmidt's bill, where she said, let me take what's basically in Don't Say Gay in Florida, along with this critical race theory, put them into one mega bill and go forward with it. Now, to put it in context, when it comes to any bill that a lawmaker introduces, if they introduce it, that basically means they love it, they support it, they're fully behind it. And in every instance that I've been a State House reporter, any lawmaker that introduces a bill has been willing to talk about their own bill. But now there's been two different occasions where I have seen Representative Schmidt in person in the Ohio State House, and she has literally not only refused, but also run away from me and accused me of harassing her simply for asking her questions. Remember, this is somebody that is paid for by the taxpayers, that was elected by Ohioans in Ohio State House, which is the people's house, and I'm a journalist asking questions, which is my First Amendment right, and I'm harassing her. It's very ironic that that's her response.
So let me ask you, for me, the obvious question. Is it her bill? Did she read the bill? Does she know what's in it? I mean, because one of the interesting things that I have found is people who do this, they get this model legislation that seems to be going across the country, and this kind of legislation that you're talking about, the Florida thing, seems to be gaining traction in other places. I got to wonder how much of it she actually read and how much she knows before she actually turned it in with her name on it.
Well, look, I would love to answer that question for you. Unfortunately, most of the questions, if not almost all of the questions I've tried to ask Representative Schmidt, she's been unwilling to answer. She told me the other day to make an appointment with her office. I have tried calls, emails, texts that have gone completely unreturned. So if she decides to take me up on an interview, I certainly will ask her those questions.
Oh, please do that. And finally, I gotta get your thoughts on this other piece of legislation that I guess is going around the State House. Evidently a bill to make ivermectin great again. And look, I'm actually, oddly enough, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to the idea of allowing stupid people to do stupid things with their body. If you wanna shove that down your throat and you want to do what comes out the other end, I'm a supporter of allowing you to do dumb stuff.
Yeah, well, look, this is a bill that was introduced. Look, it's no secret that the pandemic has been a polarizing thing. It's become political. There's a number of right-wing conservative politicians that were not interested in getting vaccinated or promoting the COVID-19 vaccine. They did not believe in its efficacy. And as a result, they have turned to things like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and other conspiracy theories to say that this could be just as good, if not better, than the COVID-19 vaccine, which, of course, the CDC has said, no, that's not true. And that's not why we are endorsing these things to be treatments for COVID-19. But as a result, you do have this extreme group of conservative politicians that want to see this come to fruition. The State House in Ohio, there is a supermajority, a veto-proof supermajority amongst Republicans, basically meaning even if Governor DeWine didn't like the bill, they could override him if they want to. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that bill. It's at its beginning stages.
Yeah, I mean, because look, how much worse could that be than the urine therapy that I've seen pitched, or Trump saying, bleach and light bulbs up your behind. Do what you got to do. Unless you knock yourself out, it's up to you. At least that's my thought. But Josh, I appreciate the time. Great work you do over there at Spectrum One News Ohio. I appreciate it. Hope you'll come back and talk to us again.
For sure. Thanks for having me on.
Great stuff. Seriously, I'm not against people doing dumb stuff. You have the right to do stupid stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you grab the podcast, share with all your friends. Never miss a second. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1830. That was the birthday of Richard Trevillek, one of the early leaders of the U.S. labor movement and the fight for the 8-hour workday. Of English descent, Richard was the son of a Cornish farmer. As a young man, Trevillek took up the trade of a ship carpenter. Soon after, he traveled to Australia to seek his fortune and to prospect for gold. The horrible working conditions caused him to speak out for workers in Australia and New Zealand before arriving in the United States. First, he came to New Orleans, where he became involved in the trade union movement. When the Civil War broke out, he traveled north. In 1862, he settled in Detroit, working in the Detroit dry docks. Soon after, Richard became president of the Ship Carpenters and Caulkers International Union. He was well known as an eloquent speaker for the cause of labor. He founded the Detroit Trades Assembly. A short-lived organization, the assembly attempted to bring together skilled tradesmen to organize for improved working conditions and hours. His skills as an orator often put Trevillek in high demand in the nearby city of Chicago. On the 4th of July celebration held by the Chicago Trades Assembly in 1965, Trevillek called for the 8-hour workday. In his speeches, Trevillek advocated that workers should not see a reduction of pay for working 8 hours. Instead, he argued that increased productivity of workers should allow their wages to stay steady. He was also a proponent of worker education. He argued that a well-read workforce could better articulate its demands. In 1869, he was elected president of the National Labor Union, an early attempt to to join workers across the country under the banner of one organization. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Yeah, I got to tell you, what's going on in Ohio is, like in a number of Republican-led states, not good stuff. And for working people, this is that moment. Wake up. It's the wake-up call. The consolidation of power that's happening, now they're coming for the women. And look, like I said, I'm not entirely 100% of, a pro-abortion person, but I'll tell you who shouldn't be making those decisions, me or the government. Just my thoughts. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on line one. Alice, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
I wish that these people, and that woman is despicable. The Republican women are way worse than the men. But I wish they would get their stuff together, because how can a 13-year-old be a woman? Because you'll notice that she said, gives a woman. I'm sorry. I want you to decide, you Republicans and evangelicals, at what point does a child become an adult? Is it 13? Is it 18? Is it 21? Is it 16? Y'all need to make up your minds, because you seem to switch,
Yeah, I think Tennessee did that, Alice.
Okay.
I think Tennessee's already doing that by going back on the age requirement for marriage. It's whenever you can have children, that's when you're a woman.
Well, I think it's actually, I told you that years ago I heard a couple of them saying, well, if they bleed, they're old enough to breed. And I'm thinking, really? So I think you're right, Rick. I think that's the new, oh, okay, you're a woman now.
Scary times.
It's crazy.
Scary times, Alice.
I know. All right, have a good one.
Appreciate the thoughts. And this is the thing. I mean, we're heading towards a really ideological, weird spot. I mean, I look at the primary going to happen in Indiana. The only thing in Indiana that people are paying attention to is, will Indiana be the next Florida or Texas? How much further to the extreme right will they go? How much more will they attack women's rights? Because again, with the news that Roe is done, it's going to revert back to the states. And how much more draconian can things get on women at the state level? Indiana is now going to be the new Texas, the new Florida, the new Ohio. And the reality is now's the time for this awakening. Now's the time for people to be paying attention. And look, now they're coming for women. Eventually, it's going to be everybody else. The ideological purity tests do not end. This is why I say, one of my primary, when I look at something, one of my primary rules, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, what was put in the Declaration of Independence, what's going to make workers' lives better, and how do we pursue life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? Is that what the Republican ideology machine is bringing us? Is this what the zealot class is bringing us? And if you don't think it is, it's time to organize. It's time to stand together. It's time to fight together. That's simple to me. And we better figure this out. And we better figure it out quick. Because they are moving fast. The fact that this decision was leaked at the Supreme Court.
KCAA Loma Linda.